Today I'll be presenting a demo on ESB Enterprise Service Bus messaging through SNS and SQS. Okay, so I would like to start off with the Amazon Web Services. So basically, I think you all know about it, but it's an Amazon cloud web hosting platform that offers a flexible, reliable, and securable, scalable, easy to use, cost-effective solutions. So in order to have this integrated into our .NET Visual Studio platform, we do need AWS Toolkit. This is where we can go into and download the toolkit. This is AWS SDK for .NET. Once you download this, you need to sign up for AWS Amazon console, where you get a secret key and access key, and after that you'll be able to log in to access all the AWS resources. So this is basically a video I have created. So this is how this is where we can get access to all AWS stuff like AWS Lambda and so here I have created a basic Lambda function which is very generic. Like I have a function handler here which basically checks for a table in DynamoDB and inserts a record into that table. Yeah, this is like function handler. And I have already created a registration table within DynamoDB which has these records, and yeah, there are 6 records. And next we'll be publishing to we are going to publish the Lambda function. So for publishing we need to mention a method to invoke, and here I'll be passing a sample input to insert data into the DynamoDB table. So I have inserted, I'm going to add Robert Hart into the table by invoking this Lambda function. So this is a pretty simple generic function which I wanted to share how Lambda is used within .NET. Oh, sorry. We are using just saying as a ESB within our gallup.com. So this is basically designed and used for Just Eat. It is actually an open source C# library which will be giving easy to use for publishing and subscribing and consuming events. All the ESB functionalities are provided within this Just Saying C# library. Yeah, this can be used on top of Amazon's SNS and SQS services. So here is the link for justeat.com. So basically Just Saying was designed for Just Eat. So and now it is an open source library, so we are making use of it. And here is the GitHub for Just Saying module. And here this is how we'll be publishing a message. So this is sample code snippet where basically the class needs to be derived from message abstract class, which is part of Just Saying library. And and we need to tell you need to specify to tell Just Saying that which message you are intended to publish. For this example, we are publishing order accepted message to the publisher, and this is the other way of consuming a message. So basically we need a handler here to pass our message, and this is the code snippet to consume a message. So the demo project which I worked on consists of these 3 classes. user registered message where it has user ID registered on and user info. User info has user PII data has full name, date of birth and country, and this user info data will be saved into S3 bucket, and whereas S3 Gallop S3 object has the S3 object JSON ignore, which will not be serialized to SNS message. So here the demo I worked on will be having one publisher, one subscriber and one region. So this is the user registered message.NET object that is published. So these things are common fields for all the message types which are in red, the timestamp ID, message type and publisher ID, whereas blue fields are specific for user registered message type. So this has S3 bucket, S3 key object and user PII information in S3 object. And how do we define publish SNS and S3 combo message type? So this is the way. First we'll be serializing user PII object to JSON and then save JSON to S3 bucket, and then we'll be setting S3 bucket name and key to Gallop S3 object, and then we'll be serializing user registered message to JSON. After that we'll be publishing message to SNS topic. And here is a sample of JSON published to SNS and SQSQ. So and the message.NET object received and deserialized from SQSQ is this. Here we got required information. And once we publish, how do we subscribe? How does the subscriber consumes SNS and S3 combo message? So these are the steps to do that. First, subscriber receives message JSON from SQSQ, and then deserialize JSON into message object. This object contains S3 object name and key, but does not contain the PII content saved in S3 bucket. Uses S3 bucket name and key to get the PII content JSON from S3 bucket, and then it will deserialize the content. So just saying also supports error handling in different ways. First way is like retry policy. So it takes care of retrying your messages for you out of the box and by default. It also, if your consumer throws an exception for any reason, the message will be redelivered. Like it attempts to deliver up to 5 times, and we can also configure that in our. We can configure the number of times it needs to be redelivered. And this is a way we can mention here, retry count before sending to error queue. And this is error queue is another way of handling. So by default, it creates a error queue by queue name underscore error. So it comes when in the time of declaration of the consumer. And for those errors that are not transistent, like application bugs or null reference things, null reference exception things, so all these will be gone into this queue name error, and just saying moves the unhandled message to an error queue. So, and there is also a command line for provided by just saying, like called just saying.tools power tool, where we can send the error queue messages to the incoming queue once they are resolved. And we can also make use of nlog. So if your consumer throws an exception for any reason, just saying message dispatcher will call an nlog to log the error. So this is the code snippet for utilizing nlog. And nlog targets can be configured as these like files, event log, database, email, and ASP.NET trace. And we can also do the customized error handling using just saying. So just saying will automatically call this error handling action when exception happen on the handling. And also the subscriber application can customize action exception SQS message to process error when exception happens on error message handling. So here is a snippet for that. Yeah, these are the resources I have used to develop my demo. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
I don't know what a combo message is.
It's just SNS and S3 together, called as combo. I mean, I'm saving part of the message in S3 object and the rest of the message in SNS. So
What's SNS and what's S3?
SNS is notification service for publishing and subscribing, distributed publishing and subscribing system, whereas S3 is an object bucket where we save the info. Q. Max size, it's like millions. 256 KB.
That's why you need to combo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. For my thing, it is not that big, but I made use of S3 object.
Does combo is like transparently distributed that across different messages, so you can not be limited by the type, or how does that look?
The S3 bucket is a single object, so you have a pointer. The Q, the SNS is the topic, and then we actually have SNS Q, so many people subscribe to the topic. And so if we have 3 or 4 subscribers, they just throw on a Q, so they can EQ whenever they feel like it. I think the max Amazon will let you do it is 14 days. That was one of the big goals, and one of the reasons we did this also is SNS was not SOC 2 compliant when we first started this, so any data had to be off on S3. They've since made it SOC 2 compliant. Now it's just really a payload thing.
So I'm sorry, I feel really dumb, but so you have subscribers subscribe to the topic, they pick up the message off the queue, and you immediately want to store that in S3.
An example would be like a login mechanism. So we may 3 or 4 different systems may know a login event happened. So the team that does the login system can actually broadcast the event as a successful login. And the other systems that want to create results that maybe 3 screens later we know they're going to see some sort of payload that can kick off that process. So they can start calling databases and redefining the data. Is that going to help? Try an example.
It sounds like I forget what that rule is called, but it sounds like in SNS you can only one thing can pick up that message, and after that point, no one else can
we
find
kind
out
of made an internal
about
rule
it.
that we put a policy on the S3 bucket, kind of like a file system, and we say the object's going to live there for 30 days and told everyone not to delete the payload, and then everyone will get a message with a pointer to the file so they can all read it.
Now it makes more sense. So you have one subscriber watching SNS or something, and then it says, "Hey everybody, look in S3 for what you need."
Yep, and they can all get it, but then it's the policy on the file system basically that deletes it. So everyone gets their own message, they can EQ it, delete the message, and so they're all independent of each other, but then they're all still looking at the single payload object.
Good evening. The next topic is Nougat, the creation and internal distribution of Nougat packages. And presenter for this, Matt Johnson here, put this topic together, organized it, and then my name is Floyd Cush. and I'll be presenting. So why use Nougat packages for internal code distribution?
Hey Floyd,
Well,
can you turn your mic on? I think it's off.
you getting this sound now? Okay. Well, the reasons to use packages for internal code distribution are essentially the same as why you like to use Nougat.org to retrieve packages to use code from public sources. And, you know, in short, things like transactional install, the uninstall, versioning, dependency management, all of those are good things. You'd like to use those for internal code distribution. You could use code repositories to do that. There are some disadvantages to that. You have to have agreement on languages and tools, and you have to build the code. All in all, it's just packages are really convenient. So if you already know how to create a Nougat package because you've done it for Nougat.org, then you know everything you need to know to do it for internal packages because it's done exactly the same way. The only thing that's different is how you do the distribution. Now, if you've never created a Nougat package before, we're going to talk about at least one good way that we've found to create packages. It's not necessarily the only way you can do it, but there are a lot of information out there about different ways of creating packages, and we thought we'd try to put something together to show you at least one good way. But first, before we get into that, let's just cover the topic of how do you publish a package once you've got it created, if you're going to consume it in your corporation. And the easiest way is simply to take the Nougat package, which is a single file, the .nupkg, and put it into a local directory. And when you do this, it's a flat file structure. You can put packages that are on the same package name, different versions together in the same directory, and different packages all together in one directory. And when you do this, then all you need to do is set up a Nougat feed that points to that local directory. And the Nougat package manager will read that directory and organize it so that it looks just like what you're used to seeing in Nougat.org. All of the versioning and all of the search and everything is there. And the only thing about this approach is that it really only works for a relatively limited number of files. You probably wouldn't want to do anything more than about 100 or 200 files this way. Also, if this is a local drive, then clearly it's not suitable as a multi-user feed, but it is really good for testing. So after you create a package, this is probably the first thing you'd want to do to try to test it to make sure it's going to install correctly. But for a more practical internal distribution, you'd probably then want to scale up and use a shared directory. And when you do this, you may also find that because of the reduced access speed to the shared drive, you're going to need to do some things to let the Nougat package manager retrieve the information more readily. And so what you're seeing here is it's not a flat file structure anymore. It's what they call a hierarchical file layout. And in that, you can see each package name gets its own directory in that feed. And then under that, each version gets its own directory. And there's even further breakdown of content and parts of the Nougat package. Now you say, well, you look at that and say, well, how are we going to do that? Well, you can do it by hand. But basically, the Nougat command line tool has a Nougat add function, which will take a Nougat package that you've built, a single file, and put it into that feed and break it up into the directories that are needed. So it's really relatively easy to do. And when you do this, then again, the package manager will read this as a feed and it will process it to present it for the consumer to consume the package. And you could do, for a shared directory, you could do it either way. You could have a flat directory, you could have this hierarchical. Either way it would work. This is just more performant. Then you can go bigger yet and actually get yourself your own Nougat server. And all these names that you're seeing up here are various commercial and open source solutions for your own private Nougat server. And there's probably more. If you go do a search you'll find even more names than this. Basically, you need to just shop for one. We don't really have a particular recommendation. But this type of a server has the best possible performance, especially in searching. And you're basically getting what Nougat.org uses. So obviously no real limitation on the number of packages that you can support. You've got very good fine-grained control over access, both to use packages and to upload packages. And instead of using the Nougat command line add command to add the package, you use Nougat push. In fact, some of you who are command line oriented may have already used Nougat push to publish to Nougat.org. So now that you're motivated to create Nougat packages, so what's a good way to do it? Okay, I'm going to be running a video now and talk through this. Here's a project that is going to build a package. You'll see it's .NET Standard 2.0. .NET Standard and .NET Core are favored by Visual Studio 2017 to be supported for package creation from the Visual Studio GUI. So you'll see they have a package tab in the properties. And that is where we'll go a little bit later to set up our package properties. Here's some code that I want to distribute. It's just a simple function, factorial, to calculate factorial of a number. I'm using the big integer class because I expect those numbers to get lots of digits. You'll see I have a README file. I've set it up. The README file has been added as a build action of content. If the build action is set to none, that file will just be left out of the package that you build. It looks like I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing next. Hold on. Okay. The package properties then, you'll see these are the kinds of properties that govern the way the package will be presented in the Nougat Package Manager. And we have the package name, which you need to make sure you pick a relatively unique one, the version, and so on. Let's see if we scroll this down here a little bit. Oh, I guess while I'm in here, I'm going to change the version because I've already published a 100, and now I want to do 101. Now, the description there is the one you'll see in the package manager. There's some tags for searching. Release notes, that's a version by version set of comments. You'll probably notice this. This is actually editing the assembly version and the file version and set up to try to match the package version. Okay, I think we're in a position that we're about ready to build, but I believe before I do that, what's we got to do here? Oh yeah, notice the generate Nougat package on build. And the reason I have that flag set is sometimes when you use the pack command, it doesn't build unless there's been changes to your file. So if you do that, generate Nougat package on build, it builds every time that there is any build for the whole project. So you see it built my packages, a release and a debug version. I'm going to go and into the project files, go to the release directory and get that new Nougat package, version 101. We'll copy that. I'm going to put it into a local directory so I can do what we've been talking about, test it. You see I already have the 100 there, C:\Nougat local source. I'm going to put in my new version, and we should be about ready to consume it. Now, if I remember right, I wanted to also point out here, in this particular package that I've built a package from, I already have newtonsoft.json installed in it. So that gets added as a package dependency to the new package that I'm creating, automatically because it's in this project. And I'm showing you here that I'm using version 10 of newtonsoft.json. The package I'm going, or the project I'm going into is going to have Newtonsoft already installed, and I just wanted to show it doesn't generate a conflict. Okay, this is the consuming project, and it is a .NET 4.6.1. It's actually a Windows Presentation Foundation application, and it's going to be a little calculator with an interface so that we can use our factorial function. Notice there's no package tab on the properties. So .NET 4.6.1, those frameworks, you can make packages with them, but you have to work at it a little bit harder. It's not encouraged in Visual Studio. And the code for this is pretty simple. Here's my reference to my company, the pure function factorial. Now, those are all unresolved and generating errors right now. And when I go to install the package, that should clear up. And I'm going to go to the package manager, which I accidentally did it on the solution, I think. I have to switch it over to the project just to make it easier to work with. Okay. And you'll see my source is local test source up there. Now the Newtonsoft in here that's already installed is 12.01. But on my local source, I can see that package I just published, 101. And the reason I see it is I set up this feed, local test source, for my Nougat package manager, and it's just as simple as give it a name and give you the path to that local directory. Okay, we should be ready to install. Oh, I'm just showing you that both versions are recognized. All right, let's install this. All right, and not all of our errors went away. So what is this thing with big integer? Well, see, .NET 4.6.1 doesn't have big integer defined. You need a reference to system.numeric. You don't need that for .NET standard. And so, close but no cigar. So we can go ahead and you'll see the system.numeric isn't in the references. We could manually add it. A lot of people do. But it would be nice if our package would have handled that for us. Makes the package more usable. So I think we're going to go back to our original package project and see if we can do something about that. All right, now basically the problem here is that when you create a project, you only get to pick one framework, and we picked .NET Standard 2.0. But we're going to try to consume our package across several different frameworks. The only way you can solve that problem is you've got to tell the project that you intend to use it in multiple targets. And so what you see here, we're going into the actual project file, and we're going to do some minor editing. It's not too bad, so you don't be afraid of that. We're going to take that target framework tag, and we're going to change that so that it becomes multi-targeted. And that, when you do that, it's actually a different tag. If you notice, this is target frameworks, plural. The one we're going to be replacing was target framework, singular. Okay? Took me a couple times before I noticed that. And so you'll see that the target frameworks lists both the .NET Standard 2.0 and the .NET 4.6.1. So now this project, when we build, is actually going to make two passes, one for each of those targets. And what we want to do is that on the pass for .NET 4.6.1, we want to put in a system.numerics reference. So you see the condition, target framework equals .NET 4.6.1. So it'll only do it for that target because system.numeric doesn't even exist for .NET Standard. So you don't want to create that kind of an attempt to stick that in. And I just added that. I'm going to add that little package, conditional package reference here at the end of my project file. And save that. And when I save that, it reloads the project. And now you're going to see that the project's got some interesting things going on in it that I've never seen before. There are our two targets. They each have their own set of dependencies. There's our system.numerics under 461. .NET Standard doesn't have that. It just has the dependencies it had before, including Newtonsoft. And if we look at the properties in this project through the GUI, interesting thing, target framework. That used to have a pick list there. It's grayed out. This is how you can tell it's a multiple target project. All right. Time to build. Maybe. Oh, let's change the version before we do that. And then I spend a few moments looking this over to decide if I'm going to change anything else before I decide, no, I'm not going to. Okay, let's build this. Now notice I get 2 DLLs per package, one for each target. And now we're going to take that new package 102 and get that published in the local test manner. Copy this. Paste it into our local source directory. Switch our project back to our consuming project. Load the package manager. Oh, look, we have an update. Perform the update, go to version 102, and the error disappears. Let's do a build and run this. Oh, before I do that, I don't know if you saw there, it added system.numerics, but that's why we got rid of our error. It's building. Somewhere here there's a application came up on another screen. Eventually I'll figure that out and go over and drag it into the recording. There we go. Let's enter an operand. Let's get 43 factorial. And there you are. And I'd like to make some acknowledgments here. I've got some associates, our associate in Germany, Damien Luxak, other associates here at Gallup Riverfront, Ashwini, Harley, and Jack. Matt Johnson, Director of Software Architecture, Marketing, and Consumer, and Heather Belt, Technology Manager. Here's some references that you will be able to get if you go to this newly published package in Nougat.org, gallup.netusersgroup.content. And just type in Gallup on the search. I think it's the only package you'll find in Nougat.org using Gallup as a search phrase. And if you need to contact me, you can reach me at floyd.cush@hotmail.com. Any questions?
Say, for instance, you have 100 of those packages and you want to suddenly go from 461 to 462. How does that update for all of those additional targets happen?
Manually.
Okay, that's what
Yeah. So, and I get the impression that this new format for the CS proj file, the project files, they're really at the very beginning of doing this. I expect to see more support for manipulating the project file either from the GUI or from some other tools. Any other questions? Yeah.
So one of the problems this introduces is now code that is referenced via packages, you can't directly navigate to it. Like if you want to go to the definition of the function.
Oh, yes.
Have you guys figured out, because that's something that we're actually trying to work through.
Well,
Symbol server.
some of my associates here have made me aware of a great deal of information that we didn't have time to try to formally present. But my understanding is that you can now get symbol files and even source code references added to the package. If your source code is in a repository that can be reached, you can actually make a reference so that after you've installed the package, you have nearly full debugging capability. So that you can check, do some searching on the web. I think you'll find that information. And it's a little bit more advanced than what I wanted to get to in this today.
The last I looked, I think you need to publish a separate sources package. Yes.
Yes.
I didn't know if like you guys do anything like where you can all build that into one, which would be really great.
You know, I think we did it at one point, and we have the additional, what is it called?
There's a S new pack. That's the symbols one.
The symbols file. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you did that, then you could debug your.
Right.
Just have like a quick comment about that. Like if you have a build for a Nougat package, like you might be able to build the symbols or build.
Right. The DevOps on the example that I showed is not by any means complete. You can do a lot more with targets and so forth to make sure that the project that builds a package is really building. You can go really all out there on trying to get that package to be a little more automated to build and full featured. And I just wanted to demonstrate that even for very simple amounts of additional work past what the GUI could do, you get some pretty good results. But there's always more that you can do. All right. Thank you.